Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks very much, all of you, for joining us. My name is Mindy Romero, and I am the director of the Center for Inclusive Democracy at the USC Sol Price School of Public Policy. I'm also faculty there. The title of today's webinar is California's Ballot Tracking Service. Who is using it, and how does it impact user confidence and behavior? This webinar highlights brand new research findings from a CID report that we're releasing today. It's available on our website, and in the chat, we have a description of it as well as a link directly to the report. The report is there now, and then by this afternoon, we will also have a two-page brief that highlights some of the findings of the report, as well as an online appendix. I want to just point that out because it has a ton of additional data at the county level that many of you may find helpful as well. So again, the link and title are there in the chat already for everyone. And this webinar is part actually of a series. So today we're highlighting the new research on ballot tracking service in California, but the webinar itself is part of a series that we are carrying out over the next 5 weeks. Today and the next 4 Tuesdays, to be exact, Tuesdays at noon, from noon to 12:45. And they all have in common, the overarching umbrella for the series is the topic of turnout and voter outreach as it relates to turnout. So if you're interested in the rest of the series, in the chat, you can see the link to the series itself, which also gives you the ability to register for the remaining webinars. So we welcome you to do that. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in and share my slides. But today, of course, is also a 45-minute presentation. I'm going to talk for maybe about a half hour or so, giving you highlights. They are, again, just highlights. So there's lots of detail in this very long, I think, thorough report. And I encourage everyone to take a look through it whenever you're able to, and then certainly, of course, to hopefully find the two-page summary of use in a practical sense in conversations. So we will have Q&A. It'll be after I run through my slides. I'm happy to answer, of course, any questions in that manner. So let's go ahead and share. As I just mentioned, today's webinar is part of a series on voter turnout and outreach. Again, you have the link in the chat. And the subtitle here is really what we're exploring in the large sense, and the overarching sense is, will voters turn out in November? Opportunities and challenges to conducting outreach in 2024 and really 2024 and beyond. So for today's topic, I want to make sure that I note something very important. So this really, the research that I'm presenting today is authored by myself and Anna Meyer. Anna Meyer is our data lead at CID, and she's really the lead on this project. And I want to thank her for all of the tremendous work that she's put in on this research and the report, again, that you all see on our website. Really just phenomenal. All right, so why are we studying ballot tracking? What is ballot tracking? If you're not familiar or you've heard it but aren't quite sure, it's simply put, a ballot locator and notification system. The purpose of it is it's really about informing voters of their status, the status of their vote by mail ballot, and letting them know, if it was mailed or when it was mailed, received, either accepted or rejected. A number of states across the US now have some form of ballot tracking, not a majority of states, but a number of states and jurisdictions. California is one of them. In the report, we outlined the process of how we got here as a state. But in short, a select number of counties in 2018 offered ballot tracks to their registered voters, to their communities. And then 2020, with the onslaught of the pandemic, it went statewide, with all counties offering it, and with the support of the Secretary of State's office. And they ultimately are the ones that procured and hold the contract with the vendor. We are looking at specifically ballot tracks, which is California's version of ballot tracking. This is not a report about ballot tracks, it's about the ballot tracking service in California. But if you want to know anything about them, we have information on our report, and you can find it there as well. Okay, so aside from what it is, the idea is that providing a ballot tracking service could do a number of things, most notably potentially increase levels of confidence in the voting process as voters will know, right, that their ballot is coming and ultimately be able to see and be assured that it has been counted. Potentially also, the idea around ballot tracks is that counties and states that utilize it could see an impact on rejection rates of vote by mail ballots. Because as part of that notification service, certainly at least with ballot tracks in California, not everywhere, but in ballot tracks in California, certainly, voters are notified whether their ballot was received and if there's a problem with their ballot. As it is state law now, it's been the case for a number of elections that counties need to notify voters if their vote by mail ballot was rejected for a signature issue, whether it's a non-matching signature or a missing signature. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the presentation. So we study specifically vote by mail tracking use rates through that ballot tracks data, how ballot tracking impacts also ballot rejections. And what we've done is an in-depth assessment of ballot tracks data that was provided to us from the California Secretary of State's office. And we want to thank them for doing this. This is the first research of its kind that we're aware of in the state and in the country. And it would have been possible without having access to those data. And with those data, voter file data, ballot tracks data, we were able to break out through our own methodology and identify the reputation, certain demographic characteristics of voters. Specifically here, I'm referring to race and ethnicity. As we'll go forward, you'll see that we are limited in the number of groups that we're able to talk about in the data, specifically the voter file ballot tracks data. I'm happy to talk about that in the Q&A in terms of why that's the case. But we present what we present, what we believe is accurate and responsible as researchers in terms of the available methodology. Next, we also conducted a statewide voter survey, representative voter survey. We've been doing this now for a number of years. We call it our California Voter Experience Survey. And on that survey, we included questions around ballot tracking awareness for eligible voters in California and their usage and the reasons for using it or not using it. And we want to thank here the Evelyn and Walter Haas Jr. Fund for supporting that survey. All right, so jumping in, we'll tackle the survey data first. Again, these are highlights here. Californians' awareness and views of ballot tracks. So a majority of eligible voters that we surveyed, and again, happy in the Q&A to talk more about the methodology, but I should note here, it was a very large survey, as it always is for us, over 11,000, eligible voters, adult citizens in the state that took this survey, representative by race, ethnicity, and age in terms of the samples. So let me just move the screen here a little bit. There we go. We asked if respondents or if survey takers were aware that in California, they have the ability to sign up for a service called Ballot Tracks, and that would allow them to receive notifications via text, phone call, email, right, notifying them of the status of their ballot. And the blue there you can see in the simple pie chart is 57%. A majority said that they were indeed aware of the availability of ballot tracks. But awareness did vary by race and ethnicity. So if you just look at the blue half here, or bottom segment of each of these bars, you can see 57%, remember, for everybody. For Asian American, it was 55, almost 56%. Black respondents said 59%, 53 for Latino respondents, and 60% for white, non-Latino, or non-Hispanic in terms of awareness. Now, as I go forward, because of time, I'm going to talk about differences by race and ethnicity and show the charts. For age, I'll talk about that, but I won't show charts just because they tend to take a little bit of time to get into when you should present them visually. And I won't show specific charts for party, but I will give some highlights, but know, again, many more points and information in the report. So for awareness by age, awareness of ballot tracks peaked among respondents aged 25 to 44, while older respondents had lower awareness levels. Democrats had the highest awareness of ballot tracks among all party affiliations. And as we break it out in the report, we look at Democrats, Republicans, no party preference, as that's the designation in California, and then all third parties combined. The majority of respondents who were aware of ballot tracks said they were signed up for the tool. So again, this is of the subset that said they were aware. 61%, that's that blue, that said, yes, I signed up for ballot tracking. Overall, if you're interested just what was the proportion of all respondents, whether they said they were aware or not, it's about 40%, but 61% of those that said they were aware said they were signed up. Sorry, 40% of all respondents said that they had signed up. 61% of those that said that they were aware of ballot tracks said they signed up. Now, I'll call this out here later when we actually present the analysis of the ballot tracks data and the voter file data of actual use. You'll see some differences, and we'll talk about why that is the case. These are people's perceptions, what they believe is the case in terms of being signed up. And we think it's important actually to make those distinctions, but I'll talk about that later. White non-Latino respondents reported signing up for ballot tracks at notably higher rates than Black and Latino respondents. So again, just looking at that blue section of each of the bars, 60%, right, for Asian American, 56 for Black, 52 for Latino, and 66 for white. Again, their perceptions of whether they've signed up. Young respondents age 18 to 24 reported the lowest ballot track sign-up rate. Again, just highlights here, and Democratic respondents had the highest reported sign-up rate for ballot tracks across all party affiliations, again, that we examined. Now, there's a lot going on in some of the charts now that we're going to cover, and I've just highlighted the data that corresponds with the point or the highlighted point that I'm making here. But again, much more that we could talk about, of course, on each of these if we had more time. So we asked people to describe the reasons they chose to track their ballot. We gave them some choices as well as other, and they could select more than one, and that's important. So we're not going to total up to 100% here, right? It's more than 100%. So concerns about ballots being received was the top reason respondents reported they signed up for ballot tracks. So if that third blue bar you'll see there says 46.3%, and the response people chose 46%. We wanted reassurance my ballot was received by election authorities. Next highest was I was automatically signed up for ballot tracking. Here I'll note that the ballot tracking service in California is voluntary. Sign up is voluntary. People are not automatically signed up, but many respondents thought they were. And then, of course, we have other reasons here as well, concerned about my ballot, that my ballot would be lost in the mail. I wanted reassurance my ballot was counted. I was concerned my ballot would be rejected. I wanted reassurance that my ballot would be received, accepted before Election Day, and so on. Regarding the automatically signed up, what we think, and we don't know for sure, of course, but what we think might be happening if we dangerously venture into that, down that path, is that, of course, California is now automatically mails every registered voter a vote by mail ballot. And we think maybe some voters, and we've heard some of this in some of our focus groups and other studies that we've had. That's why we knew to ask the question here on this survey. We think that some Californians are thinking that assuming that they are automatically signed up for ballot tracks as they automatically receive, right, their vote by mail ballot. But again, we're not quite sure exactly the reasons for that. All right, reasons for signing up for ballot tracks varied across racial and ethnic groups. Again, a lot going on here in this chart, but just showing, if we just look at that top reason, right, I wanted reassurance for my ballot was received by election authorities. That was the most common choice for the total population. You can see it varies significantly. Asian American, 37. Black, again, we're following the highlighted bar here, 34%, 39% for Latinos, white, non-Latino, non-Hispanic, 51%. Respondents under the age of 45 had higher concerns about their ballot being rejected, while older respondents were concerned about their ballot not being received, at least more, right? Concerned about their ballot not being received. So here, when some of our viewers may be thinking about conducting outreach specific to ballot tracks, voter education around ballot tracks, or maybe just doing outreach more broadly in your communities and talking about ballot tracks, it's important to understand why people might be, or at least believe that they're open to signing up, or why they said they signed up. The differences across race, ethnicity, age, and by party, right? It varies. Democrats signed up for ballot tracks for reassurance that their ballot was received and counted at higher rates than Republicans. The most common reason respondents said they did not sign up for ballot tracks. Again, this is did not sign up for ballot tracks. For those that said they were not signed up, we asked them to say why. And again, they could select multiple reasons. The most common reason that was recorded was trust in the process, that they did trust in the process. So specifically, the question is, I want to make sure this is clear for everybody. We asked, which of the following describe reasons you chose not to track your ballot? Again, these are the people that already said they were not signed up. And the most common is highlighted here. I fully trust my ballot would be received and counted by election authorities. The next most common is I was not aware that I could track my ballot. Again, of this subpopulation that said they were not signed up. Okay, Asian Americans respondents said they did not sign up for ballot tracks over security concerns at the highest rates. Again, a lot going on here. On this particular question, it was harder to find patterns by race ethnicity. There's quite a large degree of variation. Again, we encourage you to look at the report and some of the detail there. Young respondents aged 18 to 24 were the least aware of the tracking tool or the ballot tracks tool across all age groups. Democrats stated trust in the process as a reason they did not sign up for ballot tracks at higher rates than Republicans. Now we're going to talk about actual ballot tracks use. All right. So again, here we're using voter file ballot tracks data that was kindly supplied to us by the California Secretary of State's office. So currently about 5 million Californians are signed up for ballot tracks out of 22 million registered voters. And actually, as of the last specific number that we have is from the November election day, November 2022. So the general election 2022 was about 4.7 million, almost 4.8 million signed up. So accounts for ballot tracks. So you do the math, that's about a little over 20% of the 22 million registered voters that we have in our state. And notably, the number of accounts have stayed pretty stable, relatively stable, since 2020. Again, we track this and talk about this in the report. So saw a surge in 2020, and the numbers have stayed pretty similar. But let's break this out a little bit. So a larger share of voters, actual voters is what I'm focused on right here. People that actually cast a ballot in these two elections used ballot tracks to track their ballots in the 2022 primary election, a larger share than in the 2022 general election. So if you look at this chart, we've got a lot of things going on because in the report, we're talking about different groups. We're talking about registered voters, actual voters, and specifically vote by mail voters. But I'm just going to highlight the actual voters, those casting a ballot. Blue is the percent, so 30% of actual ballot tracks, 30% of actual voters that were ballot tracks users, if I can say it today. And then we can see that was for the primary, and then in the general, we can see 26.7%. All right. Registrants of color had lower ballot tracks use rates than white non-Latino registrants. And since we're focused here on registrants, I'm just highlighting in both of these charts, the registered voters, our denominator is registered voters. And really any group you look at it, but it's particularly pronounced under registered voters. If you look at, so here, let's just look at the blue bars on the primary election. So the chart on your left, you follow along with me, blue bars, chart on your left. You can see the use rate of ballot tracks for registrants, right? And it varies, right? 15% for Asian American, almost 17% for Black, 12% for Latino, 21% for white. And we see a similar story if we look at the general election as well. Ballot tracks use in both elections increased with age. And by the way, I'm going to make, of course, as we always do, these slides available on our website, and we'll also the recording of this webinar too. So if I go a little fast for you, you wanted to study a chart, wanted to look at more things, independent of the report, you will be able to access these slides. So Ballot tracts use in both elections increased with age, peaking among mid-age registrants and voters. We don't like to say middle-aged, we say mid-aged registrants and voters. Ballot tracts was notably more common among registered Democrats than any other party affiliation, including Republican, of course. And then I'm going to talk just really briefly about registered voter turnout. And I want to caution here that we are not able to make a causal connection in any way, we note this in the report, between ballot tracts use, signups and use, and voter turnout. Lots of things impact turnout rates and turnout trends. And we also recognize that there is a big self-selection issue happening here with ballot tracts because it is voluntary in California. So I want to show you the differences, but I'm not going to get into depth and show you the differences by race, ethnicity, and age. You have that in the report. So ballot tracts users had notably higher registered voter turnout rates than non-ballot tracts users in both elections. But not everybody, of course, voted, and turnout rates overall were low. And this is registered voter turnout, so that's the percent of those who were actually registered, who turned out to vote. Let's make sure we get our calculation right, clear. And you can see in the primary on the left-hand side, that chart, 55.7% of ballot tracts users turned out to vote. Non-ballot tracts users, 28%, and overall 33% for that primary. Yes, registered voter turnout was about 33% in that primary election. Lower if we looked at eligible voter turnout, but we're not talking about that today. And on the right, 75 versus 44 versus 50. All right, moving on. Ballot rejection. As I said at the outset, one of the reasons that many people have been interested in ballot tracts is the potential to impact positively rejection rates on vote by mail ballots. So if you didn't know, of course, we've already stated that California is an all vote by mail state in the sense that we automatically send everybody who's registered a vote by mail ballot. They don't have to mail that in. Indeed, most don't mail it in. People have the choice to mail it, to drop it off at a staffed voting location, to drop off at a drop box, or to vote in person still. And the availability of drop box and in-person locations and the number and ratio vary whether you're in a Voters' Choice Act county or whether you're in a traditional polling place county, but everyone has those options in this state. But in any given election, a small percentage of those vote by mail ballots get rejected. In a state like California, a small percentage still is a sizable actual number, but it is a small percentage. Okay. And I'm just checking my messages here on this. Okay. In the 2022 primary and general elections, the vote by mail rejection rate was at least 50% higher among ballot tracts users than, non-ballot tracts users than among ballot tracts users. So look at the primary here on the left. The rejection rate was 1% for ballot tracts users. And on, that's the blue bar. And then you can see in the same election primary is 1.6% for non-ballot tracts users. And we have those specific numbers too, if you are interested. For the 2022 general, it's 0.8 and 1.4. And that is like 20,000 to 10,000. But anyway, I'm happy to talk about it in the Q&A if people are interested. Moving on, ballot tracts users of color had similar vote by mail rejection gaps from white non-Latino ballot tracts users and their counterparts not using the ballot tracts service tool. So on the left, again, primary, blue is ballot tracts user, red is non-ballot tracts user. We just break it out here by race, ethnicity, the groups that we were able to identify comfortably and responsibly with these particular data. So 1.3% for Asian American ballot tracts users versus 1.7 for non-ballot tracts users. I'll just go down the line. 1.1 for Black ballot tracts users, 1.6 right for non, 1.5 Latino, 2.1 Latino non-ballot, and white 0.9 and 1.4. If you see those numbers for Latinos and you notice that they are much higher, that is a continuing trend that we've seen for a very long time in California. Latinos and young people tend to have the highest vote by mail ballot rejection rates. And on the right-hand side, I won't walk through the numbers, but similar story. Okay, vote by mail rejection rates were similar between Democratic and Republican ballot tracts users. Democratic non-ballot tracts users had higher rejection rates than their Republican counterparts. Okay, reasons for vote by mail ballot rejection. So, as I noted, and actually there's a chart here I'll show you. So the top three reasons in any election that we see that vote by mail ballots get rejected are coming in late past the acceptable deadline. And of course, in California now, as long as you get your vote by mail ballot postmarked by election day, and it's received up to it can be counted if it's received up to 7 days after election day by your local county election official. So there's a good window here in our state, but still, ballots do come in late. Aside from being late, it's signature issues. So either, again, a non-matching signature or a missing signature on the ballot envelope. And just to note, why do we have that? Why do we have that process? It's because vote by mail is actually very secure in our state to ensure for a very long time here in California. We have wanted to make sure that, of course, that vote by mail ballots that are cast by the person that is supposed to be casting them. And so we go through a signature verification process, and your signature is matched to the signature that is on file at your local elections office. But some people forget to sign their ballot. Some people sign it in a way that it does not match. We know from other research that often that's because people were working fast and scribbling, not realizing that there was going to be a match process. There's very low awareness in California among eligible voters that their signature on their vote by mail ballot indeed has to be verified. So that being noted, rejected ballots cast by ballot tracts users have lower rates of signature issues than those cast by non-ballot tracts users. So what I'm saying here is that of those that are rejected for ballot tracts users, more of them, a higher proportion of them, are for late reasons, right? So here you can see on the left, if we just look at the primary election, 5.4% of the rejected ballots were rejected for no signature, 17.8% for a signature discrepancy. That's where it just doesn't match in some way. 73, almost 74% was late, and then other reasons combined 3.1%. And you can see similar stories we go forward right into the general election. And again, for non-ballot tracts users, more signature issues, right? Late vote by mail ballots were more common among ballot tracts users of all racial and ethnic groups than among non-ballot tracts users. So a lot going on in both of these reports, but I just wanted to note this. In both of these charts, so I won't get into the detail. While ballot tracts users of all ages had lower rates of signature issues than non-ballot tracts users, young voters had the largest difference. So in a sense, if you will, potentially benefited from ballot tracts a little bit more. Republican ballot tracts, or at least, was impacted, I should say, by ballot tracts more. Republican ballot tracts and non-ballot tracts users had smaller differences in vote by mail rejection reasons than Democrats. And again, just giving you highlights in each of these sections, we'll move on to cure rates. So the majority of curable vote by mail ballots, so we were just looking at ballots that ultimately were rejected, right? Now we're going to look at what are called curable ballots. So ballots that have an issue, the voter is notified by their county election official and have the ability to correct the signature issue is what we're largely talking about here. So the majority of curable vote by mail ballots cast by ballot tracts users were corrected and counted in the 2022 primary election. And we also have general election data right there as well. But if you just look on the left-hand side, the primary, you can see 61, almost 62% of curable ballots, right, indeed ended up getting cured. A very small slither there in red is 0.6% that they attempted to cure, but it ended up still being rejected. 37% Those curable ballots did not have an attempt to be cured, at least as we know it from the voter records. And a very, very small sliver, 0.4%, voted in person, presumably getting that notice early enough to be able to do that and opting to go in person. Similar story for the general election. Asian American ballot tracks users cured their rejected ballots at higher rates than other ballot tracks users of color, while Latino ballot tracks users had by far the lowest cure rate by, again, these four groups that we're able to look at. So hopefully you can tell we have four categories here. The red and the green are just slivers that may not be totally discernible on your screens, but by and large here we're seeing the difference right between curable, what was cured and what was non-cured by race ethnicity. Okay, so I'm going to move on. Ballot tracks users age 65 and over had a vote by mail cure rate 60% higher than those age 18 to 24. So seniors versus youth voters. And Republican ballot tracks users cured their rejected vote by mail ballots at lower rates than Democratic ballot tracks users or ballot tracks users signed up as affiliated with the Democratic Party. Now, remember, as I note this, we go back to our survey data. There were differences, right, in some respects between Republicans and Democrats in terms of why they said they signed up or they didn't sign up, their trust in the system, and so forth. So, ballot tracks message delivery. So I said, of course, that there are these messages that go out, right? People get notices, and that's core to ballot tracks. The service provides information to voters. And voters have the ability about their ballot tracks, about their vote by mail ballot. And voters have the ability when they sign up to select how they want to receive those messages. So in both the 2022 primary and general elections, the majority of ballot tracks users really looked to, as they signed up, email or text notifications about their ballot status. That's what they indicated they wanted or they preferred. So if we look at the pie chart on the left, both of them have similar stories, of course, as the population has stayed pretty stable. But on the left in the legend, I just want you to see all the different choices that those that sign up have. So email only, text only, email and text, email, text, and voice, email and voice, voice only, and text and voice. And you can see overwhelmingly, well, we've got a split here, but what we're looking at is the blue, red, and gold. So email only, text only, email and text. There are differences, though, by race, ethnicity. In a moment, you'll also see by age. Asian American ballot tracks users selected email only as their message delivery system at higher rates than other racial and ethnic groups in both the primary and general elections. So again, you can see that blue at the blue band at the bottom is email only, and some significant differences, right? 39% for Asian Americans selecting email only, 31% for Black, 32% for Latino, 34%, almost 35% for white, and so on. So again, if you're trying to outreach to voters or understand people's use of ballot tracks or maybe promote ballot tracks, whatever it is that you're doing, we think that the data on how people are asking to get those messages hopefully will be useful in those efforts and to inform those efforts, however you take them. Ballot tracks message preferences did fluctuate across age groups. It's difficult in a couple of slides to try to identify or talk about patterns. So I'll just note that for when you look at the report. And then Republican ballot tracks users preferred to receive ballot tracks updates through text messages only at higher rates than Democrats. And Democrats elected to receive both email and text notifications at higher rates than Republicans, right? So two ways to get a hold. And that is it. So we've got about 10 minutes for Q&A, which is good. And I'm open to any and all questions on methodology, on the data themselves, on the purpose of the report, or on how folks might want to think about using some of the data. Do we have any questions? Okay. Well, what I will say is, again, as a reminder, this report is available on our website. For those that might have joined late, I'm going to go ahead and I know when you join late, you don't see the chat. So There we go. We're going to put it again, once again, in the chat. You got the information on the report, the link to the report, also the link to the information on the overall webinar series. Make sure that is gone. There we go. Twice is nice. We do not take positions on election reforms of any kind in California. This is a report, of course, just to identify, again, who's using it, how it may be impacting people's voting behavior. How people choose to use the data is up to them, but we do encourage you to use the data in your outreach and voter information efforts, as we think that right now we're looking at ballot tracks with a large number, 5 million, but compared to the total total registered voters in California, relatively small percentage at about 21%. So there is a lot of room to grow in terms of signups. As we've heard across the state, not only election officials, but many community groups, voter advocacy groups, voting rights groups, have wondered about, how best to be able to incorporate ballot track signups in their work. So we encourage those conversations, and we hope, in closing, to see you next Tuesday at noon for the next iteration of this series, looking at our brand new research on voter outreach efforts and people's thoughts and experiences with the election system. And you'll be getting notices again on that report as well prior to the actual webinar. Thank you all very much. Oh, I think I have another question. Hold on. For young voters, it was they actually identified all types, but I think more young voters looked at text messaging and email. All right. Thank you all for that last question. Have a great rest of the day. Enjoy the rest of your lunch if you are taking lunch right now. That's why we timed it this way. And hopefully we will see you next week. If you look at the report and have any questions whatsoever, feel free to email our team on our website. We're always happy to answer questions or also set up times for one-on-one conversations with organizations if they find an in-depth dive on the research is useful. Thank you again, everyone.